Seahawks. Welcome into a brand new episode of Trainwreck Fantasy Football. I'm looking at my mic there because I'm trying AirPods out right now for the first time, and I'm so confused about what to do with my hands. But you know what? I'm not confused about what to do in fantasy this week. Got a great show here, going to outline every game from week 3. Not last night because there's just too many injuries, and it was a terrible fucking football game. So we're not going to talk about that. We got 15 more games in week 3. We're going to talk about me, some guy named Steve, and Jordan Rosas is going to break it all down for you. Going to start here in our own backyard in Orchard Park. Buffalo Bills taking on the Washington football team. Washington, maybe not as good of a defense as teams or as, just the general public would have expected from them this year. Chase Young's off to a slow start, no sacks through 2 games. Should be nice, clean pockets for Josh Allen. Obviously, you're going to be starting him. The obvious guys. Really, there's only a few obvious guys in this game that you're starting. Gibson, McLaurin, Josh Allen, and Stephon Diggs. Now, I'm interested to see what you guys think about the Bills receivers. There are a lot of good matchups for them. We talked about it last night on the Folding Roundtable, so I got my 2 cents in there. Steve, if there are a few players on the Bills that you think you can put into your lineup, 1 or 2, who do you think they are outside of the obvious?
I really think Devin Singletary is a flex option now. And I know there was a lot of criticism of him in the preseason, talking about that he's not the RB1. He looks like the RB1 for Buffalo. I mean, he had another good week last week against the Dolphins, 82 yards and a touchdown. And this Washington defense, I think it's very good, and it will be better as the year goes on, but it hasn't been great so far this season. I think Singletary has a chance to break up a couple, and he's been used in the receiving game. 8 targets in the first 2 weeks. It's really hard for me to kind of almost play Russian roulette with the Bills receivers because you really don't know, besides Diggs, who's going to be the number 2 option each week. They have a lot of good bodies, Davis, Beasley, and Sanders. Any week they could be a start.
He's fully healthy now too, for the record.
Exactly. But I am going to trust Devin Singletary. I think the Bills at least want to establish the run a little bit this year. 24 carries in the first 2 weeks. I think he'll get 10 to 15 touches again. And if he does that, he really just needs a touchdown to give you value back. I like Devin Singletary.
All right, Devin Singletary for Steve and Jordan. If there's anyone from the Bills side of the football outside of the obvious, who are you thinking? Oh, sorry.
Singletary.
Still muted. My bad. That was my fault.
All right, we good now? So
You're
first
good.
off, I got to disagree with Steve on Devin Singletary. I'm fading him. I don't even know that he's really a flex option. Yes, he had that touchdown, but if you take away that single run, which he almost got caught on that. I mean, he was wide open and almost got caught from behind. And I know that that's one of the, the struggles that he's had is he's not a very fast back, so he does get caught sometimes. Obviously, we're not going to complain about a 46-yard touchdown. But you take that 46 yards away, and that leaves him with, 36 yards on 13 carries. So that's about 3 yards a clip. That's really not that great of an average. He gets you a little bit in the passing game, but he's almost like a tight end in the sense that if he doesn't score, you really don't get much out of him.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I would definitely go him over Moss. I saw Rob Snyder commented that he's got Moss. Maybe look for someone else. Maybe stay tuned for the rest of the episode. See if there's other people that maybe you could throw into your RB2 or flex spot instead of him. But Jordan, maybe outside of the Bills' backs, what do you feel maybe in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're playing Stephon Diggs. I think that there's really a couple guys, though, that I'm still waiting to see who really emerges as the clear number 2. I think that you've got several guys that can play either week. I'm not feeling too confident in guaranteeing production out of anybody just yet. I will say if you don't have Dawson Knox, I would say pick him up and try and stash him now. There's been a couple plays where we're starting to see maybe that tight end university is really starting to take over, and he's going to be somebody that I think when he has that breakout game, I think he's going to go quick, especially for dynasty leagues. If you can grab him, snag him now and put him on the bench.
I will say I love Cole Beasley this week. Love, absolutely love him. I think the matchup against Kendall Fuller in the slot is a really, really juicy one. Kendall Fuller, he has been on some top-notch receivers over the first 2 weeks, but he has not looked very good. And so they kind of put him into the slot, hoping he might be able to, get back to who he used to be. He's been largely a disappointment is what Grant Paulson from NBC Sports Washington told me last night. But other side of the ball, I mean, again, obviously McLaurin, obviously Gibson. The other running backs, J.D. McKissick and Jarrett Patterson. Obviously love Jarrett Patterson as a talent, but for fantasy. He's just not quite there yet. If Gibson goes down with an injury, I think Patterson will be the bell cow back, and McKissick's role would largely really stay the same. But really, I don't know if there's anyone else I want to touch here. I don't want to play Taylor Heineke because, the Washington offensive line just isn't that great. And the Bills defensive line kind of broke out last week. I don't trust Heineke to have a lot of time to throw. And then other than, maybe Logan Thomas, obviously, start him if you drafted him, you kind of have to. But Diami Brown, it's just a lot of washiness. Adam Humphries, no one on the other side of the ball I really want to start myself. Steve?
Yeah, I think it comes down to how you see the game script for this game, and I really do think Trey White is going to be all over Terry. I think you still have to start him regardless because he's matchup proof. But he's getting the Trey White treatment, which means I really like the other receivers of Washington because they're going to have to get targets if you think the Bills blow them out. So obviously Logan Thomas is a start. Tight end's a wasteland. Besides Kelsey, Waller, even Kittle's not off to a great start, but besides those two, it's just been a wasteland this year. I think Logan Thomas is a must start. He got 7 targets in Heineke's start last week, and I think he's going to look to him a lot. But Diami Brown actually looked all right against the Giants. He had 6 targets, and I think if you're going to have to compare between Diami Brown or Adam Humphries as maybe a long shot DFS play or a flex play, if you have to, I would go Brown over Humphries just because I think he's got bigger play potential, and Heineke had decent chemistry with him against the Giants.
Yeah, the one saving grace I'd say for Heineke. The one saving grace I would say for Heineke, and thus the passing game, is that he is good with his legs. Yeah. And I gave him to you last week as a fill-in guy. I would take him out of your lineup this week because Buffalo's defense is much different than the Giants. But I do think he does have some ability to extend some plays. So when those pass rushers start breaking through, there will be that extra second for his receivers to break for him to hit him. But I think it's going to be a long game for that passing offense. Yeah. I would bench anybody you can afford to.
And real quick, I do like Heineke's athleticism and rolling out. He didn't really look to run at all against the Giants. Only 4 attempts for 6 yards. He really wasn't trying to scramble, which I was surprised because I thought he was going to a lot more. Yeah. It looked like a lot of checkdowns. That's why McKissick had a big game, and that's kind of why I like Logan Thomas this week. Because I think the Bills get up ahead early, and if Heineke doesn't really want to roll out, if that's not their game plan, then I think we're going to see a lot of checkdowns to the safety receivers, which is Thomas, McKissick, and maybe even Adam Humphries.
Yeah, I actually kind of like McKissick as a DFS play, just because you can probably get him pretty cheap, and I think the boom potential is pretty high there if he does start checking down a lot.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think DraftKings is full point PPR and FanDuel is half point. So DraftKings definitely better for McKissick if you are doing DFS. We talked about checkdowns. This next game is definitely going to have a lot of them. Cleveland Browns, Chicago Bears. Now Jarvis Landry is sidelined with Odell Beckham making his return. On that note, if you drafted OBJ, sure, you should be putting him in the lineup. The Bears defense is not as daunting as it once was, I would say.
Not
the pass defense, but still, we've not seen Baker Mayfield make a connection with OBJ in the time they've been together in Cleveland this entire, 3 years now, give or take. I'm not super high on him. If you have better options, I understand benching Odell Beckham. Maybe if you're in that position, comment who you have and maybe we can give you some advice there. But not really touching the Browns receivers. The running backs, though, both are locked in, absolutely locked into my lineup. The usage is going to be there. And, I started this out with checkdowns. Baker Mayfield's going to be checking down to the tight ends a lot. He's been doing that a ton, utilizing 3 different tight ends and utilizing both running backs in the passing game. So I say bench Baker, bench the receivers, and the tight ends could be worth something.
Yeah, David Njoku's an interesting play here. I know we talked about him a little bit last week, but looking at the Browns, when they went up against a good offense 2 weeks ago in the Rams, I think that was a game when what?
You mean the Chiefs?
No, the Bears. Sorry, the Bears.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
When they went up against a good offense 2 weeks ago,
they both were orange. It's the same team.
Yeah, orange teams from Ohio, But no, I think that was a game where Tyler Higbee was looking to have a really promising start to the season. So if David Njoku can kind of capitalize on that, find some weaknesses there. And again, like Wake said, there are going to be holes in the passing game because both of their 2 top receivers are dinged up. So somebody's going to have to step up. I think Njoku's a good candidate for that.
Anthony Schwartz is another candidate for it. I picked him up in a really, really, really deep league. Just wanted to throw his name out there really quick. Rookie receiver who he's speedy, and he got a lot of targets in the first game, not so much in the second. Steve, sorry I cut you off there. How do you look at the Browns?
You're good. I think I'm fading all the Browns except Nick Chubb and Odell Beckham. I don't even like Kareem Hunt too much this week just because he hasn't had a lot of targets so far in the passing game this year. And I know Higbee played okay in week 1, but the Bears have one of the most athletic pass coverage linebackers in Roquan Smith, who I think he will take away the tight end position. He'll take away a lot of the checkdowns. I like Odell to actually have a pretty good week, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. If he's fully healthy, I want Odell in my lineup, and obviously Nick Chubb's an auto start. But there's one guy I wouldn't start him this week, but maybe pick him up, stash him on your bench. Last year when Landry was out or Odell was out, it was Donovan Peoples-Jones who stepped up for the Browns. It's their number 2. I think he's someone you can get away with stashing. I would not start him. I would not play him, but I would absolutely stash Donovan Peoples-Jones and just see what his role is the first week without Landry.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Switch to great point, Steve. And to the other side of the ball, I think Justin Fields is startable in any league this week, to be completely honest. I think if you're in a really bad, let's say you drafted Ryan Tannehill as your QB1, I would definitely start Justin Fields over Ryan Tannehill. There are probably better options on the waiver wire right now, but I do like him in this game against the Browns. Tyrod Taylor was having a really, really good game against the same team last week before he got hurt. Justin Fields is a much better athlete and a much better quarterback than Tyrod Taylor is. But elsewhere, obviously, Allen Robinson, you got to put him out there. I'm probably benching almost every other pass catcher on the Bears. Darnell Mooney, he was exciting coming into the league or coming into this year, but it's just not panning out like we wanted it to.
He's got 15 targets. He's got 15 targets in 2 weeks.
I was just gonna say
he's getting the targets.
But he's not getting the touchdowns, right, Wake? So if he has a touchdown in one of the 2 weeks, his year looks a lot better. So I think Mooney is someone. Maybe don't start him this week, but I wouldn't give up on him. He's actually looked so far this year.
Don't give up. Yeah. Just don't start him against the Browns secondary is all. Steve, I'll let you keep going here.
And that's kind of why I don't think I want to start Justin Fields. So far this year, the rookie quarterbacks have looked bad. All of them. There really hasn't been a rookie quarterback that has looked good. I guess you could say Mac Jones, but he hasn't really had to do anything. He's just checking down and handing the ball
2 yards down the goddamn field.
Exactly. So I think I'm gonna fade. I think I'm gonna fade Fields this week. A lot of people love Fields. They're like, his rushing upside. He had 10 carries in his first week when he came in for Dalton. Here's the thing about Fields. I think the Browns' defense is really good this year. I think their secondary is really good. And they haven't gotten off to a great start. But week 1, they played the Chiefs. Nobody's stopping that passing offense. You can just hope to contain them. And week 2, Tyrod played well. But the Browns are a team. I think they're going to get better as the season goes on. And they have too much talent in the secondary to throw up an egg against a rookie quarterback. I think the Browns give Fields fits. I think they force him into a few turnovers. And he may have a rushing floor. But everyone talks about him being like this super scrambler. He was never that type of guy at Ohio State. He ran when he had to, but he wasn't a run-first type of quarterback. I'm pumping the brakes on Fields this week. I really wouldn't start him in any of my leagues unless I had to, but I don't think he's in my top 15, even top 20 quarterbacks this week. Wow. I think it's just obvious for the Bears for me. Montgomery, Allen Robinson, and nothing else.
Jordan, is it obvious for you?
Steve. The thing with Fields is the Bears have not committed to him. Like, Dalton is hurt, so they're going to him. But they even said when Andy's back, he's our guy.
They're so stupid.
That's Matt Nagy being an idiot.
A lot of that you can chalk up to just the front office saying, well, we're going to stick with our guy and whatnot. We've seen it countless times over the years. But still, I was like, you drafted this guy in the first round. At the very least, I would stay non-committal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This would be a good no comment. We're going to change the subject when it gets brought up in press conferences. I wouldn't give that kind of a hard stance so early on. But again, like you mentioned, the Browns have a solid defense. There's some good pass rushers in there. And yes, Fields was good in college. He's athletic and whatnot, but we haven't seen him at the NFL level in the regular season.
He didn't even look good last week in the short sample size he had.
He didn't look great. Yeah, against a bad defense too. So but when I say he's startable, I mean he's a borderline QB1 in my eyes this week,
I don't think
nothing
so.
more. Just because of the rushing, he could run for 80 yards, and that saves his fantasy day no matter how many times he turns the ball over.
If you want to play it that way, I guess. I really don't want to take the risk on that. I'm gonna pump the brakes on Fields this week.
All right, well, let's see if we're pumping the brakes on this trade that James asking about. Pittman and Antonio Gibson for Brandon Cooks. Yeah. He owns Cooks. I mean, I think you got to take that trade.
You have to take this deal. I mean, you're getting Gibson at his absolute lowest. He'll be all year long. Forget what happened last Thursday. McKissick is not going to be the go-to receiving back. Yes, he'll get his, but Gibson was a receiver in college. He's going to get work. And Michael Pittman, yeah, he had a great week last week against the Rams. He wasn't really matched up against Jalen Ramsey, which shocked me, but Pittman was great, and he's going to be the number one receiver for the Colts this year.
And they'll lean on him with Carson Wentz hurt, too. They're going to have to.
Yeah, this is a classic buy low, sell high. I would not be shocked if Pittman's better than Cooks the rest of the year. Cooks has looked great. He's the best option in the Texans offense, but you're telling me you're getting Gibson, who was drafted end of first round, start of second round at the beginning of the year, for Cooks, and you're getting Pittman on top of that when Cooks was drafted like in the 8th round. This is 100%. This is 100%. Take it.
Jordan, do you disagree at all, or can we move on?
No, I agree. I would say for this week, I would rather have Cooks, but this is a full season trade.
Well, he already
you're getting
played.
Cooks at his ceiling. You're getting these two guys at their floor. So when I look at the overall value for the end of the season, I got two graphs going this way, and I think that if you 100%. Make that trade right now, your upside is way higher than Brandon Cooks.
Yep, season long.
You don't think twice about this one. You just take this deal.
I would take it.
Just do it. Hammer it right now, James. Stop watching and go accept this trade. While we start to talk about the Detroit Lions, we'll talk about the Lions first, James. You can go accept this trade and then come back for the actual exciting part of this game. Hawkinson, I don't know. Okay, you guys tell. I don't want to start either Lions running back this week because I don't think Jamal Williams is good, and I'm sorry, I just don't. And DeAndre Swift is banged up still, kind of. I just don't know. I don't like him a lot. If
Swift is healthy, I'm playing him, obviously. I am fine playing Jamal Williams either. I project this game to be a high-scoring game. I project this to have the Ravens big, and that means a lot of garbage time. And what happens in garbage time? Jared Goff dumps it up to his favorite targets, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, and TJ Hawkinson. I think those are the three guys you're going to play in these leagues. If you are really ballsy and you want Jared Goff for that garbage time, then go ahead. But the Ravens' defense hasn't been incredible so far this year. They've had a tough schedule, but they've allowed teams to move the ball on them. And I think the only way the Lions do move the ball against the Ravens is just checkdowns to the tight end and the running backs. I'm fine starting any of the three, Wick.
Well, let me put it this way, because you said that you like Justin Fields as a top as a QB1 this week. Yeah. I'm taking Jared Goff as a top 12 QB this week in fantasy. Here's the thing. Hear me out for a sec. I'm
going to try.
Week 1, Ravens and Raiders. And what did we see? Derek Carr put up 400 yards? He had more passing yards than anybody else in the league. Darren Waller was getting peppered. He had 19 targets, something crazy like that. I don't think we're going to see quite those kind of numbers from Goff and Hawkinson, but 350 yards, 10 targets for Hawkinson. I think that's very reasonable for this team. Again, I'm not saying make Goff your starter for the full season, but for this week, if you're looking for a juicy start,
I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
How I would rebuttal is Derek Carr's supporting cast is just a lot better than Jared Goff's overall. I'm much more comfortable with someone throwing to Henry Ruggs on top of Darren Waller, and Kenyon Drake's been effective out of the backfield. Even Bryan Edwards, it took him a while in that Ravens game, but he came alive and he made the catches when they needed catches to be made. Outside of TJ Hawkinson and the running backs, I don't like Quintez Cephas. Amon-Ra St. Brown is taking a while to kind of settle in. I'd like him as a developmental wide receiver. No.
What I will say if you have to start Jared Goff, I wouldn't start him. I think has sleeper potential because of garbage time. But we're forgetting that the Ravens are one of the heaviest blitzing teams in the league. And you know who's awful against the blitz? And I've watched him for 5 years be awful against the blitz. It's Jared Goff. So he could have a horrible 3-4 turnover game. That's why I just like playing the skill position guys he's going to dump it off to. I think you can get away with Jamal Williams because I expect the Ravens to go up big. I expect them to have a lot of targets in garbage time.
Right. The other side of the ball, obviously, Lamar's being started. Marquise Brown has the best matchup of any wide receiver in the NFL this week with Ifeatu Melifonwu being hurt. As also Jeff Okudah had ruptured his Achilles in week 1. So he's going to go for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, maybe. It could really – he might be one of those guys that you play against and you just get pissed off and don't open Fantasy Cast for the rest of the day. But outside of that –
a question about who was the number 1 receiver in Baltimore a couple weeks ago, and somebody said that Marquise Brown was going to have a good year. Who was that again now?
It's 1 week, Joey. It's 1 week, buddy. 1 week. I think you could start any of the Ravens' offensive players that you normally would. Lamar, Brown, Tyson Williams, Mark Andrews, and then I would even go as far as say you could start Murray and Sammy Watkins as well. You could start any of them. It's just pick and choose who's going to go off against this Lions defense. They're not stopping anyone this year. Whoever's playing the Lions, I love playing their skill position guys. I'm stacking them in DFS lineups. If I, have them and it's like a borderline, do I start or sit this guy? If they're playing the Lions, they get the boost. Give me all the Ravens skill position players.
And I love the Ravens as a backup fantasy team because there's so many guys. Like the distribution is so nice this year where if you got anybody who's injured, you're not going to find a ton of stars in the Ravens. Like Marquise Brown is probably taken in most of your leagues. But if you need somebody to plug in, like Latavius Murray has a nose for the end zone. Tyson Williams, he's probably going to get about 10-ish carries, but he's also probably going to get about 5 targets. You know what I mean? So there's a bunch of players here that are fill-in caliber guys, and especially going up against a team like the Lions, you could take your pick from this offense. Pretty much anybody should get you at bare minimum fill-in flex numbers.
And that's the best part with the Ravens. They don't need a lot of volume to get points back against the Lions. The Ravens are a big play type of offense where they get a big chunk here, a big chunk there. They don't need a ton of volume. I think all these guys can return decent value this week.
Absolutely. And this next game, maybe less full of guys who can return value, mainly because the quarterback on one side is just not going to be good. And then the defense for that team is really, really good, kind of. Titans, Colts, this could have a very low total. I don't know how excited I am to attack any part of this game. I mean, let's start on Indianapolis side of the ball. I mean, Wentz obviously sprained both his ankles, which is hilarious, but also it's very depressing because, we talked about that guy, James was asking if he should trade for Michael Pittman. This week, don't base the trade off of the results from this week. If anything, that guy will probably want to make that trade even more after this week. You might even be able to squeeze more out of him because Gibson against the Bills and Pittman against the Titans.
I would take it right now.
I would too, but you might be able to squeeze some more after Pittman maybe disappoints this week just because of the guy throwing to him. I'm still putting him out there. I'm playing him in a guillotine league, so I trust the guy. I really do.
I do too.
But outside of him, Jonathan Taylor, sure, play him. Other than those two, don't play a single Indianapolis Colt, despite the good matchup.
Yeah. And I would say if you have Zach Pascal, just sell him high. He may have another good week, but he's the 18th ranked receiver in fantasy right now. He's not going to be the 18th ranked receiver. And when the Colts' other receivers get healthy, he's just going to fall off. It's really pretty simple for the Colts side. Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, and that's really it. I think they're projecting to start Brett Hundley this week. I mean, he runs a little bit.
Going to be Hundley? Okay.
That's what they're saying right now. Who knows? But it's Taylor and Pittman for me. I'm not trusting Hines either. And Rodrigo Blankenship. But of course.
I was just going to say,
of course,
Blankenship.
Yeah, you didn't bring up Jack Doyle. He could be, with 2 inexperienced quarterbacks, one of them's going to make the start. Jordan, do you like Jack Doyle as a potential streaming tight end?
I mean, you could stream him, but here's the thing: Jack Doyle, for the good games he has, the bad games are so bad. Like this is a guy who could put up 50 yards and 3 touchdowns, or he could have 1 catch for 10 yards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I will say he's got 12 targets through 2 weeks, and he's getting red zone looks with inexperienced quarterback play for the Colts against a bad Titans defense. He is someone worth taking a flyer on because the tight end position is a dead zone. It's awful this year. He's someone that I'm fine taking a flyer on him.
And then let's switch to the other side of the ball. Tannehill, not someone that we're really particularly interested, I'm guessing, this week. Steve, Jordan, I know all three of us were kind of – or Jordan, were you high on Tannehill in the offseason? I can't remember.
No, I wasn't. Tannehill was I thought that he would be like around the 10 to 15 rank. I thought he could creep into maybe top 8, but I didn't really see him being all that great. Yeah. I also didn't see him being all this bad, though. So let me don't confuse this for me bragging about, I told you about Tannehill, because I didn't think he'd be – this much of a disappointment. But I did say, if you're drafting Tannehill, don't reach for the guy. Make sure that you have a well-balanced roster before you get that quarterback. So hopefully if you're the guy with Tannehill, the rest of your roster is filled out with some stars that, you can plug in any of the quarterbacks I've given you so far and do okay.
And all that being said, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry are getting started this week no matter what. But Julio has been largely disappointing.
He was good last week.
Week 2, he was good.
And he should have had a touchdown. He should have had a touchdown. That getting called back was blasphemous. But I think you could start Henry, A.J. Julio. Tannehill, he's been disappointing. He hasn't thrown for any touchdowns, and he was really bad against Arizona. He looked a little bit better against Seattle. But Indy, another good pass rush. I really don't want to start Tannehill. But if you have to, I'm okay with it just because, like you said, he's throwing to A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. He's got Derrick Henry.
I do think Tannehill's going to have a pretty big rebound game at some point. But at this stage of the season, since he's disappointed a bit, I'm okay missing that first game back. I'm more putting him into that sort of, all right, prove it to me territory. When you show that you're a good quarterback, then I'll start considering putting you in the line.
And if you want to wait on him, after this week, the Titans play the Jets and the Jaguars. So now is the time to buy low on Titans players, besides Henry, obviously, because he exploded. But Jets and Jaguars next 2 weeks.
Don't drop Tannehill, regardless of how bad he's done.
No. Even if he busts this week. Even if he busts again this week, hold on to him. Yeah,
and then if he busts in week 4, then cut him loose. And then
if he busts against the Jets defense, then you can cut ties.
Yeah. And actually, that's a really good point that I want to make is before you drop a player, take a look at their upcoming schedule for the next week or two. Because if you got somebody who's disappointed going up against a good team, but now they're up against a dumpster fire team the next week, you might want to think about holding on to them for just one more week. And I think Tannehill is a perfect case here. If he can't get it going against the Jets, he's not going to get it going.
No, absolutely not.
No, I agree.
2 quarterbacks who absolutely should have it going this week. A game that should be the 4:25 game, to be completely honest, that the entire country gets. But no, it's stuck at 1 o'clock. Kansas City Chiefs against the Chargers. This game is going to be a fun one. Both quarterbacks, obviously, you're starting. Both running backs, you are definitely starting between Eckler and Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire, obviously, proceed with caution for the rest of the season. He hasn't looked overly great. He did have kind of the game-losing turnover for the Chiefs against the Ravens. So, we could see Darrell Williams start to factor in just a little bit more if CEH keeps this up. Unfortunately, I was high on him, so that sucks for me to say, to be completely honest. But the wide receivers are where it gets fun for this game. Hill and Allen, 100% getting started.
Of course.
Now, Mike Williams, Mecole Hardman, 2 middling wide receiver 2s, 3s, give or take. Steve, you and I were big on Mecole Hardman coming into this year. He said, who the hell am I to take targets away from Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce? And he's right. But do you think that he's useful this week against the Chargers?
Yeah, just because I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring game. As good as the Chiefs' offense has looked, their defense hasn't looked great either, and Herbert is a good enough quarterback to move the ball on the Chiefs consistently. So I think Hardman is fine. His targets went from 3 in week 1 to 8 in week 2, so it did jump up. And you saw what the Ravens did. They said anybody but Tyreek is going to beat us. And when that's the case, other guys for the Chiefs offense step up. I still think Mecole Hardman's the 3rd best option after Hill and Kelce. So yeah, I like Mecole Hardman. I don't love him, But I'm fine. I'm fine if you need to start him. I'd much rather start Mike Williams over McCole Hardman this week if I had to choose between the two. But I'm fine with either or.
Oh, Mike Williams does not belong on a bench this week.
22 targets in 2 weeks.
Well, here's the thing. Mike Williams was considered a good receiver coming into the league.
Yes.
It's taken him a long time to kind of break out, but if this is his breakout, maybe he's a late bloomer. This guy was talented coming in. Like, it's not like he was some, undrafted dude who hung around and worked his way up through practice squads. He was, if I remember correctly, he was a first-round pick in the year Mahomes was drafted, 2017, I want to say, right?
Think so.
I think you're right.
That was like the Corey Davis, John Ross year, and Mike Williams, or was he the year before, something like that? He's been in the league a few years, but I remember he was one of the top picks when he came in. Generally, it doesn't take receivers this long to break out, but dude's on a tear, and he's dealing with a young quarterback. Justin Herbert might be throwing different looks for the team than what Mike Williams has gotten before. Now he might be a better fit now. I would absolutely play him. I'm going to fade Mecole Hardman this week, though, because I look at the Chargers defense, and they've held up reasonably well. I mean, they didn't – Dallas has a really, at least on paper, a really good offense, and I think it's a similar style offense to Kansas City where you've got a great passing game. The run game hasn't quite been as effective, and the Chargers really held their own against Dallas. This was a team that went toe-to-toe with Tampa last week in week 1, and before that, the Chiefs went toe-to-toe with Tampa in the Super Bowl. They lost, but, I think don't sleep on the Chargers D this week. Don't play them, of course.
Don't play them. Yeah. No, they could give Asante Samuels looked good. They could give the Chiefs some fits. And Patrick Mahomes did prove to be less than human last week, or equal to human. He's actually a normal football player. So
subhuman.
Yep.
He lost one game. He's not
a superhero. But he's human just like the rest of the NFL quarterbacks.
I want to say one last point on this game. I'm not starting either of them, but if you have an extra bench spot, Darrell Williams or Jerick McKinnon, just stash them there. McKinnon hasn't done anything yet, but if Clyde continues to look the way he is, it doesn't matter who is the running back. If they're the number one in the Chiefs offense, they're fantasy relevant. So if the Chiefs don't like Clyde, and we've kind of seen them last year at the end of the year work other guys in, Darrell Williams or Jerick McKinnon are the other two who are active on the roster each week. There's someone, if you have the bench spot, just stash them, because you never know, too. I mean, an injury opens up a rule, too. If you have that bench spot, just throw a running back on there.
So let me ask you guys, why do you think Clyde is still the starting running back? Do you think it's because he's truly the best guy in that roster, or do you think it's because they spent a first-round pick on him a year ago? And
I think it's a combination of both. I do.
I kind of see him as like the first running back in a while that's struggled in the Chiefs offense.
Bring up the question, Mike. I would say it's the first-round pick, but...
Yeah, it's both. I don't think Darrell Williams is really that good. I just think he's...
I don't think any of them are that great. It's just if they're on the Chiefs, they're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
and so
Clyde
James is asking, Tyson Williams, Clyde, DeAndre Swift, Marquise Brown, Sterling Shepard. Start 2. I'm guessing he means at least one must be a running back.
Yeah,
but either way, I'm going with the 2 Ravens on this list, and I don't know if it's that close for me. I'm going Tyson Williams. I'm going
If DeAndre
interesting against Atlanta, but we'll talk about
DeAndre Swift is 100% healthy. They say he's full to go. He has to be one of my 2 starters. I think he has the highest upside, and I really think the garbage time potential too. And then after Swift, I would say either Tyson or Marquise Brown. Actually,
I think Marquise
don't
Brown
tempt me. Don't tempt me to go Sterling Shepard against the Falcons, though, because I'll do it, and I'll do it with full confidence.
It's a nice match.
You know
what? Options here.
DeAndre Swift and Sterling Shepard. I'll go with those 2. If Swift's healthy, if he's not, then throw in Tyson Williams
over Marquise Brown, though.
Yeah. I think the Ravens, they're just gonna spread it around. I really like Shepard this year. He looks like number 1 in the Jacks. We'll get to that in the Jacks.
I'm out here in LA. I gotta go Hollywood. Brown. I think he's the best player on the list. I would say if Swift is healthy, put him in. Otherwise, if you got questions, I think Tyson Williams, like I mentioned about the Ravens players, I think is a very safe play. Not the highest ceiling, but a pretty high floor.
And I think
I would definitely put Marquise Brown in there.
And we're all in agreement. Clyde's fifth, right? He's last on this list.
Clyde is the only guy I can say definitely don't start. Okay. I think I line closer to. I think I'm in between you guys, or maybe closer to Jordan. I can't remember what you both said already. It's Long Island brain. It's getting to me. But yeah, DeAndre Swift, if he's healthy, I would put him in over Tyson. If you have any concerns about it, Tyson is by far the safer play. So I would probably go him. And then between Marquise Brown and Sterling Shepard, that's elsewhere where it comes down to me. And I'll say the Giants-Falcons game has the potential to be more competitive. So there's less likelihood that Sterling Shepard gets phased out of that game. So he might be a little bit safer where Hollywood has that, as I said earlier, 200-yard, 3-touchdown ceiling against a terrible Lions secondary. We'll move into a game now, and this is when we'll see the view count go down to 0 because it's super boring. New England Patriots against the New Orleans Saints. This might end up being one of the lowest scoring games of the entire NFL season. Two decent defenses, two offenses that really can't put it together. I'm not starting any quarterbacks. I'm going to start Alvin Kamara. I don't know if I want to start any Patriots running back unless it's James White in PPR. So far, do any of you disagree with me?
I'm starting Alvin Kamara, and that's it from this game. I can't trust.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. I can't trust Jameis. Yeah, I really can't. I want to trust Jameis, but against Belichick, I'm a little terrified. And the Patriots, I mean, we're not just talking about two good defenses in the Saints and Patriots, two very good defenses, but two very good head coaches for both teams. Yes. And they're going to be able to counter what the other team wants to do. I don't trust Jacoby Myers enough to start him. I think it's just Alvin Kamara here, and maybe Damian Harris, but I think you're banking on a touchdown for Harris. He's going to have no role in the receiving game, and the Saints have a very, very good run defense. So I would just say Alvin Kamara. Obviously, he's an obviously start, but if you have him, start him, no one else.
Honestly, I don't even know that I want to start these defenses because both of these offenses have been competent to good. I mean, the Saints thrashed the Packers. So that kind of rules out the Patriots defense to me. I think they'll be better, but like this game, it's going to be so tough to tell what to expect because there's so much inconsistency among the Saints that I think, I mean, Alvin Kamara, obviously, like if you drafted Alvin Kamara, you took him top 5, you really can't afford to bench him, probably.
Yeah. You're starting Kamara every week, no matter what the matchup is.
But that's the thing. Like that's not even really a choice. You know, I would stay away from everything else in this game.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, especially after he busted last week. He got, I think, like 11 total touches or something stupid like that, maybe even less. I mean, if they want to be in games, they need to run the ball through Alvin Kamara and not through whatever the fuck they wanted to do last week. I don't get it. There's no excuse for him to have less than 18 touches in any given week.
I wrote about in my power rankings. Yeah. He led the team in yards from scrimmage with 30.
It was bad.
0. I mean, that is abysmal.
It was really bad. This next game will definitely have a lot more yardage.
I will say
less known.
I will say don't start him. I don't know if you have to drop him yet, but Marquez Callaway off to a rough start so far this year.
Really rough start. Yeah.
Really rough start. And I think it's just because he's facing number 1 corners. He's not used to it.
When Michael Thomas gets back into the lineup, Marquez Callaway's value is going to skyrocket. Yeah, he'll be guarded like a number 2 wide receiver, which is what he should be.
But you can't start him right now. There's unfortunate.
And back to the one player that James was asking about, Sterling Shepard. We'll talk about the Giants against the Falcons here. Daniel Jones is going to be a QB1 this week. He's going to be
Daniel Jones is going to be a top 5 QB this week. Daniel Jones is someone I'm playing in DFS. The Falcons, I think, have the worst pass defense in football. And Daniel Jones, he's looked better this year throwing the ball. I know everyone said, he's the worst quarterback in the league. He's looked better. And it's a lot of Giants dysfunction why his career's off to a rocky start. But there's one thing that Daniel Jones is doing finally. He's running. He's using his athleticism. And if he does that against the Falcons, he has a super high floor. He's like a poor man's Jalen Hurts right now for me. And I like Daniel Jones to do what Hurts did against the Falcons. Run a little bit and shred a bad secondary. And the Giants, everyone jokes about them. They have good offensive weapons. Barkley's off to a rough start, but Galladay, Slayton, and then you got Sterling Shepard. They're going to be able to move the ball in this bad Falcons defense. I love Daniel Jones this week.
So here's the thing with Jones for me. I think a lot of people, because I was banging the table for him in the offseason, I said he'd be an elite QB2, and he's actually even been better than that. You mentioned he'd be a top 5 QB this week. In ESPN PPR leagues, he's actually the number 5 quarterback on fantasy.
Crazy.
But I think this is a classic case of people confusing real life rankings with fantasy rankings. And so rushing for 30 yards in garbage time is better than throwing a 3-yard screen on 3rd and 1 that sets up the game-winning field goal. From a fantasy standpoint, 100%. We would much rather have 30 rushing yards. And I said with Daniel Jones, he's a guy that can run the ball, and a lot of people say, oh, he tripped an open field. I'm like, okay, that's still what? 5 fantasy points on that one play? You know what I mean? Like, I'll take it. Obviously, we would have liked to see that touchdown, from a year ago. Everybody should know the play I'm talking about. But, those are fantasy points that he's putting up. And against the Falcons, here's the thing. The Falcons are a somewhat competitive-ish offense in the sense that they can challenge a team like the Lions.
Somewhat competitive-ish.
This team went up against the Bucs, and they put up 25 points. The average points in an NFL game is around 22, so they put up above average. Now, they gave up 48, so it wasn't really a game. But I don't think the Giants are putting up 48 on them. So my point is, Jones is going to have to be throwing the ball. It's going to be a back-and-forth type of game because neither one of these teams is very good. I don't think the Falcons win this game, but I think they're good enough that the Giants have to play competitive football for 4 quarters.
Yeah, and Jordan, you mentioned how Jones is the 5th-ranked quarterback in ESPN. He faced the Broncos and the football team in the first 2 weeks. 2 defenses that we're all very high on in the offseason, 2 defenses that should be pretty good. Now you get Atlanta. I think that's even a huge boost. He looked all right against Denver and Washington. Daniel Jones is just don't fumble. That's all you got to do. Just don't fumble the ball.
Don't turn the ball over. That's it.
Yeah, if he does that, I think he smashes against Atlanta. I love him this week.
Yeah.
And so obviously then we're looking at the receivers too. I mean, Sterling Shepard's getting started. He can be a wide receiver 2 maybe this week. Kenny Galladay could be a wide receiver 2, 3, maybe a wide receiver 1. He has a wide range of outcomes just because we don't really know what to expect from him.
He is questionable right now too with a hip injury, so he's someone to just keep an eye on.
Yeah, I've never really liked Kenny Galladay just because he's too inconsistent for me. But this is one of those weeks, if he's going to have a big one, this is a great matchup to do it.
Yeah. And then even Slayton can be a flex value receiver here. Evan Ingram could even possibly he's limited right now in practice, so I don't know. But if you're I understand wanting him to show you that he's worth it before playing him. But if you're really struggling at tight end and this is your best option, you could have a lot worse options out there. But switching to the Falcons side of the football, Jordan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say Evan Ingram or Jack Doyle.
Jack Doyle.
Evan Ingram. If he plays, I like the matchup a little bit better. And Ingram is someone I think that they use more than just as a couple targets in the red zone type of deal. And it's Daniel Jones versus Brett Hundley or Jacob Eason. That's kind of where.
Right.
Yeah, fair. I mean, last time we disagreed, I said start Tony Pollard over James Robinson in this episode last week, and boy, did that work out for me. So I can't wait to clip this one and put it up on TWS Fantasy on Twitter. But Falcons side of the ball, I mean, let's not spend too much time, right? Don't start Matt Ryan, start Calvin Ridley, start Kyle Pitts, maybe put Mike Davis in your flex, but don't be excited.
You're talking about the wrong running back on the Falcons. I'd rather play Cordarrelle over Mike Davis. I'm at that point. I'm at that point now. I know he's not getting a ton of carries. He's only had 7 in the first 2 weeks, but he's getting targets in the receiving game. And when the Falcons need a play, it's like a situation where they need to get a first down or it's a tight game. They need something. Cordarelle's the one in. It's not Mike Davis. I like Cordarelle more than Mike Davis this year. He's not a true running back, but against the Giants defense, I think Cordarelle, you'll see some targets. And if the Giants score a lot on the Falcons, guess who's going to be the pass-catching running back for the Falcons going the other way? It's not going to be Mike Davis.
So we got a trade here, and I want to just take a look at this here. Logan Thomas and Chase Claypool for George Kittle. Is that a fair trade? You'd be receiving Kittle. Hit that trade. Make it happen right now. San Francisco has do they even have a healthy running back? Their only healthy running back who was on the team last week was a special teamer.
Yeah.
I would say George Kittle's. I think this is the lowest George Kittle's value has probably ever been.
100%.
Maybe even considering when he was hurt last year.
Yeah.
I would say Chase Claypool is somebody who's inconsistent. Logan Thomas is a
He also has Claypool on his bench, is what he's
end,
saying. His wide receiver depth has to be pretty good for that.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to trade for someone at their lowest point in the season. There's no way Kittle goes lower than he is right now. He's going to get worked into the offense more. We know what George Kittle is, right? We've seen George Kittle. He is a mismatch. He is a monster. This is great value for Kittle. I would take this in a heartbeat.
And we have one more trade before we get back to Patterson and Mike Davis talking about that. Keegan is asking if he should give up DJ Moore, Damian Harris, and Jamal Williams for Jonathan Taylor, Bryan Edwards, and Elijah Moore. I don't think so. I think you should hold on to the guys that you got. I really do. I like those. Elijah Moore, I don't want – I don't think the Raiders keep this up. I love Bryan Edwards. I really do. But he's going to be more of a flex play all year, whereas basically every player you're giving up can be in a starting spot at their respective position for most of this season, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Wick. I think we've seen that DJ Moore is the clear number one in Carolina. And if McCaffrey's injury lingers, he's going to get even more volume in the passing game. Damian Harris, he is what he is. He's a good running back, not going to get worked in the receiving game. And Jamal Williams, I really like him just because the Lions are going to be trailing a lot of garbage time opportunities. Exactly. Jonathan Taylor, Bryan Edwards, Elijah Moore, kind of the same thing here. You're trading for potential rather than what they really are. Taylor's been okay this year, but Derek Carr's not throwing for 400 a week. So the Raiders' receiving game is going to have to go down. And I don't want any part of the Jets' offense. Elijah Moore in a dynasty, maybe. But right now, no thank you. Give me DJ Moore, who I can plug into my lineup every week. And then Damian Harris and Jamal Williams, two solid running back options in a year where running backs are very tough to find in free agency.
Yeah, I think Jordan. The best player in this trade is DJ Moore.
Okay.
Jonathan, I would rather have DJ Moore than Jonathan Taylor just outright. You know, if I was drafting, I would right now in a redraft, I would take DJ Moore over Jonathan Taylor. Really just depends on what your running back depth looks like. If you really need a running back, you can swing this trade if you got the wide receiver depth because there are a lot of good receivers.
He would be trading these guys, so we're telling him not to do the deal.
He's giving up DJ Moore.
Right.
So. That's what I'm saying. If your running back depth is so bad that you need somebody to fill in, I can understand it.
He did give me his running back depth in another comment, actually. And I think, if anything, he should try to swing a trade for a tight end, like a top-tier tight end. He's got Mixon, Eckler, Tyson Williams.
Eckler? Yeah, no.
And Tyson Williams and Damian Harris. I mean, you got a good team.
I would.
You got a really good team. Yeah,
there's no reason to trade for guys who
over Jefferson. Man. Yeah, I wouldn't trade volume at this point because you've got. If I was going to make a trade, I would offer a couple really solid players and try to get like a top tier guy at the position. You know, if you wanted to make a trade for like Travis Kelce, you've got the depth to do
Kittle,
it. Where you
Waller.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't even. I don't even know if you could swing a trade for Kittle, but yeah, I mean, I think you've got enough solid guys to fill up your starting roster that at this point you're just trading to improve your bench because nobody that you're trading for really makes you that much better. I mean, between Mixon and Eckler, are we as sure that Jonathan Taylor is better than those two guys? I mean, you're talking about the best guy in this trade is maybe a flex player for you. You know,
I'd rather take Eckler and Mixon over Jonathan Taylor.
Keegan, never change, baby, never change, man. Don't change that lineup at all. So we'll tie a bow on the Mike Davis, Cordarrelle Patterson discussion here, Jordan. You're the only one who didn't get a word in, so I'll let you do this. How do you feel about them? Do you lean one way or the other, or are they people you're avoiding at this moment?
So I think both of them actually are playable this week, just because I don't think as much as we've talked about how we like the Giants. I mentioned that Keegan, great to see it.
No problem, Keegan.
I think this could be a close enough game where both of these guys get work, where most Falcons games, you're going to see them getting blown out. They got to resort to the passing game, and I think that's where Cordarrelle Patterson kind of has a bit of an edge. But the Falcons are also at the stage in the season where it's clear that they're awful. It's clear that taking a tight end at number 4 really didn't make them that much better of a team. Not saying it's a mistake, because drafting one of the rookie quarterbacks wasn't going to transform them into a great team either. But they're at a point now where, okay, we might as well try whatever fits, whatever works. And since Cordarrelle Patterson is kind of the new guy, I don't say new guy, but like he hasn't been their starting running back. Now it's a bit more encouraging than, all right, let's plug him in and see where he fits, because he is a Swiss Army knife type player. No coach has really quite figured him out, but he has electric plays from pretty much any position he's ever played. It's just a matter of consistency. So,
yeah, stat of the day here for this to tie ball on the conversation. Cordarrelle Patterson Matt Ryan has the second highest passer rating when targeting him than any other player on the team. The only player who's received at least 9 targets that is higher than him is Calvin Ridley. He does better passing to Cordarrelle Patterson than Mike Davis, Kyle Pitts, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst. Just the list kind of goes on. Everyone except for Lee Smith. Yeah. And Lee Smith's not getting targets. Cordarrelle Patterson is. So maybe buy low on Cordarrelle Patterson. That could be an interesting buy low candidate at this point.
I would say buy low on Kyle Pitts too. I actually think Kyle Pitts is going to be very good as the season goes on. Super athletic tight end, 14 targets already in 2 weeks, and the Falcons are going to be trailing, which means they're going to be targeting him.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't saying it was a mistake to pick him.
No.
I'm just saying
no.
a tight end is not going to fix your team. You know what I mean?
No,
he's a good piece, but that's not enough to fix the
He's
mess.
great for Daniel Jones, great for fantasy, not great for the state of the team at this moment. Moving on to AFC North divisional matchup, Steelers, Bengals. I believe I just saw before we went live, Deontay Johnson is going to be out for this game. So obviously that means Chase Claypool and Juju, lock him into your lineups. And I think James Washington even has flex value in this game. Ben Roth, he could.
I just hate James Washington.
But Ben Roethlisberger loves him. And I'm not saying to start
Ben Roethlisberger has been bad.
He's been not good. He's been very not good. Yeah. But then going on there, don't touch the tight ends in Pittsburgh. Not enough to go around there. And Najee are obviously starting. I feel like the Pittsburgh side of the ball is relatively easy to diagnose. Does anyone disagree, or should we move on to the Bengals, where it might be a little more fun to talk about?
Pittsburgh,
I think that's fair.
I love Najee Harris and DFS this week too. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Jordan, kick it off with the Bengals. How do you feel about Joe Burrow, Mixon, the receivers? How are you breaking this one down?
I got a nervous feeling. Feeling about this because I've said that the Bengals are about an injury away from being where they were last year. I don't think that they've fixed everything. And last year they were okay until the injuries happened. And this Pittsburgh pass rush, this whole defense is nasty. If there is a team that can tear through that offensive line, cause some havoc, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon got hurt because the offensive line couldn't protect them last year. And the offensive line has done enough so far, but I don't know that there is a worse team to have to play for the Cincinnati Bengals than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm very worried about these guys. If you have them, play them. It's just a bad feeling I have that we might see some injuries this week just because they got so many guys that can get into the backfield on Pittsburgh. That being said, if you got Jamar Chase, I'll let Steve keep bragging about him because he keeps producing. Tyler Boyd is an interesting check down option because I don't think that Burrow's going to have a whole lot of time. And Mixon,
especially with T.
Higgins is doubtful. Yep, he's doubtful.
Yeah. So to the moon for the other two. T. Higgins was going to have a nice matchup too because Joe Hayden's hurt and he might not be playing. So at very worst case, he was getting a banged up Joe Hayden. If Joe Hayden doesn't go, it's like a second year cornerback who's just not very, very good. Mm-hmm. That would be on T. So hopefully he's able to play. But Steve, how do you look at this? Are you comfortable with any of the Bengals receivers?
I'm comfortable. If T. Higgins is out, I'm comfortable with Boyd and Chase. If T. Higgins plays, I'm comfortable with T. Higgins and Chase. Boyd would be just basically on injury if T. Higgins out, plug him in. And I'm fine with both of them. I like them both a good amount. Burrow scares me just because he turned over the ball a decent amount against the Bears. The Steelers have a very, very good pass rush and a solid secondary too. I wouldn't want to play Burrow unless I had to. The only league I have to play him in is our 18-team guillotine. So I'm just hoping.
It's down to 16 now.
Yeah, 16 now. Hoping he gets a little garbage time. But I would say Mixon, you probably will play Mixon if you have him. But I'm
volume.
Chase and Boyd if Higgins is out. If Higgins is in, then it's kind of a mess. I'm still playing Chase regardless because I like his talent, but he really was busting last week until a late 40-yard touchdown.
Mm-hmm. So
it's a bad matchup for Bengals. It's a really bad matchup for them.
Yeah, we agree with you. It's going to be a tough one for Bengals wide receiver owners, and I own at least one in pretty much every league I'm in. So thoughts and prayers over to Wake. But also thoughts and prayers to Jacksonville because they're just a bad football team, and Urban Meyer is going to leave for USC, and then Trevor Lawrence is going to be an official bust. So great, we can move on. No, it's not that simple.
I'd play Lawrence this week. I would. I actually would. And it's not. I'm not saying play Trevor Lawrence over other stud QBs, but Trevor Lawrence is someone I think could be a QB1 this week, and I know he's been bad. I know he's been bad so far this week, but the Cardinals are going to score at will against the Jaguars, and the Cardinals defense is not that great. They were good in week 1 against the Titans because Chandler Jones had 5 sacks, but overall their secondary not very good. This is a matchup Trevor Lawrence can exploit a little bit, and he's got his receivers are healthy. Chark, Shenault, and Jones are all going to play this week. Trevor Lawrence is someone who maybe he doesn't have a great first half, but I think he could finish with 300 yards and a couple scores. And we know that he's been horrible so far this year, but we also saw him in college, how well he played. Maybe it takes a few weeks to adjust. I'm not giving up on Lawrence yet, and I think this is a week you can get away streaming him.
Jordan?
So here's the thing with Trevor Lawrence, and we see this sometimes with big school quarterbacks, is they get to the NFL and things are more equalized. In the sense of you suddenly not surrounded by guys who are all more talented than the team you're playing against. Yep. And I really like Marvin Jones. I like the connection there. I said before the season, Marvin Jones would be a nice security blanket. That's kind of what he's been for quarterbacks throughout his career, and that's panned out really well. Trevor Lawrence, I'm not going to call him a bust. It's too soon to call him a bust.
Of course it is.
He went to a team that had one win. I mean, this team hasn't won in over a year. We can't blame Trevor Lawrence for that. But this guy, we're talking about a rookie quarterback in probably the worst situation any quarterback has gone to since Baker Mayfield went to the Browns. And I don't know that I can get behind him this week. For whatever reason,
I can get behind it in DFS, but
I do see what Steve's saying.
Well, they are going to be. I'm not saying start him over, these other stud QBs, but there's a lot of. I would start Trevor Lawrence over Joe Burrow this week. I would.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
And I think there's a handful of those middle tier quarterbacks. I think I'd take Lawrence over Ryan Tannehill this week. Just guys like that. I think Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I might. The more I think about it, the more inclined I would be to agree with that, to be honest. But let's enough on Trevor Lawrence. We have other players in the game to talk about too. Obviously, Steve, if you're saying you're going to start Lawrence, you're fine putting all 3 of the receivers into your lineup. I think all of them could be fantasy viable this week. It's just a matter of what kind of output you get from them.
The only one I'm going to pump the brakes on is DJ Chark, just because he's had a really rough start to the year so far. He's got, I think, 13 targets, but only 4 catches on the 13 targets. He hasn't
targets, actually.
Yeah, wow. 16 targets, only 4 catches on the 16 targets. He hasn't looked great so far. And Marvin Jones and Shenault look like the number 1 and 2 options for Lawrence. I think Chark has potential going forward, but I pumped the brakes on him this week, and I think you're fine with either Shenault or Marvin Jones plugging them in. I'm fine with either, starting either.
No. I love Jones this week. Absolutely love him. James Robinson, I do like too. I think the share of the carries is going to come his way. I mean, as the season goes on, if it keeps going like this, Urban Meyer knows that the square peg round hole thing. You can't do the same thing except expecting a different result. He's smart enough to know that that's the definition of insanity. So I don't think that he'll keep going with it, but it's not a fantastic matchup for James Robinson, but it's good enough where if he actually gets 18 touches, he can definitely produce in it. Jordan, looking at the Jacksonville side, who do you love? Who do you hate?
As far as who do I hate, pretty much everybody except for the receivers.
There we go.
All right. I would honestly, I'm trying to find a way to bench James Robinson.
I don't blame you.
I like James Robinson. He's just he's caught. I'm free James Robinson. Free James Robinson.
Right.
That's where my heart is at. That's where my head's at. He deserves better. I will say, speaking of running backs, though, I really like Chase Edmonds for this week.
Me too.
Yes,
this
I
is
do.
a guy who's kind of been on the fringe of flex, flirting with wide receiver too. I think he gets a lot more targets, and when he's had the touches, he's been effective. It's just a number.
He just hasn't scored.
Honestly,
he just hasn't scored.
Chase Edmonds, James Conner, I think you can get away with playing either one of them this week.
Conner.
I don't want to touch James Conner personally. I like guillotines or deep leagues like that. Sure, I get it. I think I might be forced into playing him in one guillotine league that I'm in. But we're all in tandem here that Chase Edmonds is a lock for your lineups this week, whether it's a flex or even RB2 value. Kyler Murray, obviously. Now, I think we should all tell everyone that you should be excited about Rondale Moore, but also understand that he's not going to lead the Cardinals in targets every single week.
Correct. And also that A.J. Green and Christian Kirk could have weeks where they become the second best receiver on the Cardinals. That's kind of where I like Rondale Moore. I think he's talented, but A.J. Green is also talented. Christian Kirk is also talented, but I'm not comfortable starting any of the number 2 receivers on the Cardinals this week just because I don't really know who's going to be the number 2. If gun to my head I had to pick one, I'll take Rondale Moore, but I'm not thrilled about it. I think it's pretty simple with the Cardinals. Kyler, Hopkins, Edmonds. Great matchup. They should all dominate. And if you want to take a chance against a bad Jags D, then fine. Start one of the other Cardinals wideouts.
Jordan?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think all the Cardinals are they're almost turning. I don't want to say a poor man's Bucks because I think they're better than that, but maybe like a middle class Bucks, where you've got a lot of mouths.
I think they're just on the same level as the Bucks, to be completely honest.
For their offense.
What I'm saying is,
I think receiver output. Yeah, no, middle
receivers.
Tier. No, you're right. No, that's better.
You know what I'm saying? Like the number 1 receiver, I think DeAndre Hopkins is better than anybody the Bucks have as a pass catcher. Yeah. But you look at the guys behind them, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, I think they're a little bit better than what the Cardinals have. But again, you got guys that could spout off. They're kind of similar to the Ravens in that you can kind of take your pick this week. They should all be at least decent. Maybe one of them goes off. If you're looking for a fill-in, not a bad place to look.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on this game, for streaming purposes or stash him because he could continue to get a larger role, Max Williams has played 77% of the Cardinals' offensive snaps, and I think he's getting 80% of the tight end routes right now. I mean, that's opportunity. And when you're looking for a tight end, you're looking for opportunity in a good offense, and Max Williams has that. So he had a great game last week. It's not going to be 15 points every single week, pretty much. But, I think that if you are struggling to find someone to keep in your lineup, maybe you drafted Cole Kmet hoping he would break out. Max Williams could be a nice guy to stash on your bench. Wait for him to break out. I do like him this week as a desperation option if you really are that desperate. But one team that's really, really desperate are the New York Jets, and it's not going to be good for them this week. It could be another game where they put up 6 points. I'm not playing a single New York Jet at all. Not even Corey Davis. Don't even want to play Corey Davis this week.
Can we just skip past the Jets? Yeah. Can we just skip past them?
Yeah.
I will say, though, if he's available in 45% of leagues, go get Michael Carter and stash him or try to buy low on him. I think he actually will become fantasy relevant as the year goes on and become the Jets' number 1 back. But this week against the Broncos defense, not touching any Jets.
No, but for the Broncos, I mean, Teddy Two Gloves is in play. Both running backs are in play. All the wide receivers are in play. Noah Fant's in play. Well, okay, not all the wide receivers. How do we feel about KJ Hamler? Because obviously we're starting Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton, I was just waiting for the statement game coming back. We got that last week, so he's good. He's good to go, locked in the roster, set it and forget it. KJ Hamler.
Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. Yeah, go ahead.
I
don't want to start either.
No?
I don't know. I don't know if I need to see a little bit more out of him before I can trust him.
for sure.
So my thing with the Broncos this week is I don't think, it's a great matchup against the Jets defense. I don't think they're going to run up the score. That's just not how the Broncos offense operates. They're going to play really good defense. It's going to be a low-scoring, ugly game.
Control.
So only start the studs. I'm really only starting Courtland Sutton and Noah Fant. If you want to start one of Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams, fine. I'm not thrilled about it. But I really think the Broncos could win this game like a 20-3, like a 20-6. That's not a ton of fantasy points to go around. So Broncos defense, Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, and I'm done with them.
I was just about to say, I think this will be similar to the Patriots-Jets game from a week ago.
Yes.
I think the Broncos, they're 2-0, but I think it's really, give them credit, but I think it's largely because of they've had an easy schedule, and they're not really, they've had controlling wins, but they're not like blowing these teams out of the water. You know what I mean? It's still a game at halftime. That's how
Teddy plays. They're just, a conservative offense with a very good defense.
Yeah, it's Vic Fangio too. That's just the way they do it. So that one was really easy. Yeah, bet the under in that game easily.
It's got to be low.
It's got to be low. It could be like 41.5. This one could also have a low-ish total. I can't imagine being a Raiders fan. I can't imagine walking up to Pittsburgh, Baltimore, or the Dolphins being excited to watch any of those games. Of course, the Baltimore one exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
But for this game, let's start with the Raiders side of the ball, I guess. I don't know. What's up with Josh Jacobs? Is he a full go? Do either of you guys know how he's looking for this weekend?
I think he's doubtful. I think last I looked, he was doubtful with the ankle injury. So usually when it's not questionable, I just assume they're going to be out if they're doubtful. So right now I'm thinking of the Raiders offense where there's no Jacobs. So
yeah. So that means that
I would view Kenyon Drake as a reasonable flex this week.
Well, I'll view him as a reasonable flex every week. On the Fantasy Fallout on Monday with Joe DiBiase, one of my takeaways from last week was that Kenyon's Drake, his usage does not change when Josh Jacobs is out of the lineup. It was just Peyton Barber slotting into there.
Yep.
Literally, he had 2 more targets, the same amount of carries from week 1 to week 2. So, I'm fine starting Kenyon Drake in a flex. That's totally fine by me in PPR only. But other than that, Peyton Barber's no one we're going to start. Henry Ruggs is, I just don't know how I feel against him going against that Miami secondary. It's a good unit. I don't know if I'm starting him, Bryan Edwards, or Hunter Renfrow, to be honest. Darren Waller might be the only guy on the Raiders side of the ball I want to start.
Yeah, I think Waller obviously is a must start. If I had to pick one of the receivers, I'd go Renfrow. I just think he would be the safest against Miami, just the way I think the Raiders would move the ball on the Dolphins. I think it'd be a lot of work in the slot, but I'm not thrilled about it. But yeah, it's just Waller for me, and I don't even trust Kenyon Drake enough to start him this week. I think the Raiders offense has to come down to earth a little bit. We know Derek Carr isn't this good. I don't want to hear everyone talking about, he's in the MVP talk. We've seen Derek Carr enough to know what he is. We've seen this
before.
Exactly. So let's pump the brakes on the Raiders offense. You're starting Darren Waller. And then after that,
Yeah.
So
Jordan, anything different?
Yeah, the reason that I really love Darren Waller is because when we saw them go up against a good secondary in the Ravens, Derek Carr just targeted Darren Waller an obscene amount of times. 19 targets to a tight end. I don't even know if I've ever seen that before for a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So I love Darren Waller this week. Derek Carr, I think he's startable. I think a lot of the issue with the Raiders, he's not always consistent, but they also haven't had a good defense. You mentioned betting totals and whatnot. I have a rule. I never, ever, ever bet on Raiders games because that team is so inconsistent. I will not touch them. I do not touch them when it comes to money and the Raiders. I do not touch the Raiders. This is a team that very nearly beat Kansas City last year and very nearly lost to the Jets last year. Yep. The Dolphins, they got spanked 35-0. Let's be real. They're not that bad of a team. It was a bad week for them. I don't think they're a great team, especially without their starting quarterback. But I think the drop-off between what we've seen of Tua and what we know about Jacoby Brissett really isn't that significant. I think
there's a negative drop off, meaning that Brissett is better than Tua.
You think Brissett is better than Tua?
Right now,
I won't go that far, but I will also say that Brissett in there doesn't change my opinion, or Tua being in there doesn't change my opinion on the Dolphins who I want to play because I don't really want to play any of them.
I agree. Myles Gaskin can be a flex maybe.
Yeah.
And
Jalen Waddle maybe, because I think he
desperate.
could have a big play against this Raiders defense. But other than that,
Yeah, I told you to take Myles Gaskin out of your lineup last week against the Bills. You can put him back in as a flex. I think I would rather have Gaskin than Drake as a flex.
That's fine.
I think I still like Waddle more than Fuller. Waddle's going up against a rookie cornerback, so I like that matchup for him a little bit. And he was beating veteran cornerbacks too. So I mean, I think I'm not gonna say Waddle is matchup proof, but it's gonna take a good cornerback to stop him from at least returning wide receiver 3 value. I mean, Will Fuller, he I don't know. It's backup quarterback, and not even that's like. I said that I think Brissett's better than Tua. I'm not hating it because it's a backup quarterback, meaning he's worse. I'm saying it's backup quarterback, meaning he didn't get a lot of reps with the ones. I don't know how seamlessly he's going to be able to come in, especially with a player who has not played in the NFL regular season. So
the other thing too is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was done. Yeah.
Will Fuller missed last week with a personal issue, and the team was kind of like, "Hush, we're not going to go into it." So. We don't know. It could have been anything from I heard rumors that he was contemplating retirement. Sometimes teams will play it like that if there's a death in the family or something like that. So I'm not trying to speculate or whatnot, but he may be physically healthy, but he may not be 100% there mentally. There may be some other stuff going on in his life where he's not totally focused on football right now to play at his optimal performance levels. So I would be cautionary with my approach to Fuller.
Yeah, the one Dolphins reporter did say that it's possible that Fuller doesn't play all season long. And so obviously just hope whatever's going on in Will Fuller's life, hope that he's okay. Hope everything's all right with his family and all that. That's most important. Don't tweet at him if you drafted him, for the love of God. Like, let me just say that.
Please do not.
That's my number one rule.
No, wait. They care about your tweets. The athletes care about your fantasy team.
They do. I'm sorry. How ignorant of me. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, that's the only reason they're playing football is for your fantasy teams.
Of course. The last 3 games we got to talk about, honestly, they're all kind of fun. And it's nice that I believe the Vikings Seahawks is going to be the game that most of the country gets at 4 p.m. on Sunday. And this is going to be a really, really good one. I mean, the Vikings, Kirk Cousins looks good. He is startable. I would start him. He's probably you should consider him a top 12 fantasy quarterback from now until the end of the season with the way he's playing.
And the weapons he has. And the weapons he has.
KJ Osborne's coming into it. Like,
shout out UB.
Shout out UB. He did go down to Miami after he transferred out. But you know what? Still love the guy. I mean, everybody on the Vikings offense, less anybody at the tight end position, is startable this week against the Seahawks defense. Can we just move on from there?
I think this game's pretty simple. I think there's good skill positions on either side that I want to start. And it's the same guys you start every week. Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne, I'm fine with any of them. Cousins, I'm fine with. And then Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf, and Carson. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and all those guys are going to be included.
Yeah.
Jordan?
No, I think you pretty much said it. I could talk, but, there's not really much else to say. I would say bench the defenses. Kickers.
That's it.
Kickers are
there is one thing. If Cook's out, obviously, Madison.
Because Cook is questionable.
Because Cook is questionable. He feels like he's questionable every week. He's like Julio, was just questionable every week during practices. But I think he has an ankle injury right now. If he's out, Madison, get him in. And if Madison is somehow available in your league right now, because he's only rostered in 33% of ESPN leagues, just pick him up. If Cook's out, Madison is borderline RB1 this week.
Absolutely, yeah. And
now Wake was pounding the table to make sure you had Chuba Hubbard on your roster, and if you took his advice, you're feeling pretty good now.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we'll talk about all the injuries and everything that happened on Thursday night, and for this weekend and Monday night on Fantasy Fallout next week. But man, I'm so happy Chuba's going to get some use. He didn't look. I'm going to save it. I said I would save it for Monday. I'm going to save it for Monday. San Francisco.
I'm just pissed because I had the first overall pick in one of my leagues, And I didn't want the first overall pick because I didn't want to be the guy that took McCaffrey with the first overall pick. I just didn't want to be in that position because I was like, I wanted to trade McCaffrey and I didn't. I had a guy offer me a trade in one of my leagues. He offered me Miles Sanders, Saquon Barkley, and Robert Woods for Christian McCaffrey. And I sat on the trade. I didn't make the trade, and I was like, I don't really love any of these guys coming back. But it was on Sleeper, and so on Sleeper you have the option where you can make a trade that just stays open. It doesn't expire because this guy knew that a healthy McCaffrey was better than these guys. So I logged in, was checking Sleeper, and when McCaffrey went down, that trade was still open. And it took everything in me not to accept it, and I was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that heartless.
Well, speaking of heartless, Aaron Rodgers, his heart's still in it. No, he's not heartless. He's a good guy. But do we want to play him against the 49ers defense is the question this week. Steve?
Yeah, I think
you came
I'm
back
fine.
against the Lions. You should balance there, right?
I think I'm fine playing Aaron Rodgers. Last time he played San Fran in a big game, he got embarrassed in the playoffs. So I expect Rodgers to play a little better this week. I mean, it's where he grew up. So yeah, I like Rodgers. And then it's really, I mean, it's no one else really. Packers are easy, right? It's a QB, a wideout, and a running back. It's Rodgers, Adams, and Jones.
What about I was just about to say.
If you have Tonyan, you're starting him.
Yeah, I guess that's fair because tight end's just bad. But Tonyan, you're just banking on a TD for him to give you value. And that's what you banked on all last year, and it worked. It worked last week. I don't love Tonyan.
Starter, I would say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just think he relies too much on scoring to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah. He's startable, but there's numerous better options.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then, Jordan, is the Green Bay Packers side of the ball that simple to you as well?
Yeah. I think especially with the wideouts that they have behind Adams, there's still not enough clarity to label somebody as a clear-cut wide receiver too. So it's just a big three and Tonyan if you need him.
And then, obviously, now we'll move to the San Francisco side. I mean, we're not going to start Jimmy Garoppolo. I hate Jimmy Garoppolo. He might be my least favorite quarterback in the NFL just because he is good enough to keep the job, but bad enough to hold that team back.
I would say the worst thing an NFL team can possibly have is a mediocre quarterback. Somebody who's good enough to keep the job, but not good enough to get you over the hump because he won't get replaced. He'll cost you top-tier dollar, and you're not going to get the production out of him. You won't get better. You won't get worse enough to get the draft picks you need. And eventually that guy will leave, and you'll have no studs behind him and no draft picks in the pipeline. And especially now with their run game too.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I would bench their receivers.
All of them.
I would play Ayuk and not Samuel because I think Debo's
going to get Jair's going to be. Yeah,
I think Jair is going to shadow Debo.
I don't think I'd play Ayuk. Debo's someone you probably got in the middle part of your rounds. You got lucky because he's been a stud so far, so you may have the luxury to be able to bench him. I'm starting Trey Sermon. I'm starting Trey Sermon this week. He's going to be the starting running back, and the 49ers invested draft capital in him. I loved him in college. I thought he was going to be a stud. It was weird, a healthy scratch in week 1. He only had, a carry in week 2. But you know what? There's no other options now. He has talent. I don't know why he wasn't being used too much at the start of the year, but he can run away with this backfield, and this may be the week to do it. Under the lights, primetime game against the Packers.
Yeah. Is he going to clear the concussion protocol, though?
Yeah, he's out of it. He's already out.
Yeah, he cleared it.
And they said he's likely to be the starting running back.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Sermon and Kittle.
Kittle. What are you guys' thoughts on Trenton Cannon?
No. That's
That's a hard pass for me.
I mean, I'm fine with he's a speculative ad because that's just the way of the game for the 49ers running backs. But I don't know if I would start him this week. Not even.
Who's a sneaky stash is Jeff Wilson. He could,
coming off
if
IR.
these injuries linger, when he comes off IR, he could be. I think he's owned in only 6% of leagues. He's someone too. If you have IR spots, you could pick him up and throw him right on there and wait. He's a sneaky a guy I'd like to stash.
Literally, just drop your kicker to be able to do that, so you don't give up anyone of value.
And then just pick up a different kicker.
Yeah,
Simple.
Exactly. Man, that was easy. Okay.
Yeah, that game was
that game's not going to be as exciting as I thought it would. Monday night game could be a little bit better, though, with the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, and NFC Beast Showdown taking us out of Week 3. Now, it's definitely start to actually talk about what the running back usage will be for the Dallas Cowboys. It seems like it's genuinely going to be very close to a 50-50 split from here on out. Maybe riding the hot hand for some games. I mean, if I were them, we've seen what happens to running backs when they get overused. I would make it a 50-50 split because Zeke and Pollard, one, are both good enough where they can still be effective in that role, and two, can both, actually provide you fantasy football value, even if they're only getting 50% of the touches or carries at the very least. I don't have a problem starting either of them this week at all. Pollard would probably be closer to a flex just because Zeke is Zeke. He can come back and be amazing at any moment. But if you have either of them, you should probably be starting them unless they're a deep depth piece on your team for some reason, like Pollard.
Yeah, I think that's fair analysis. It looks like it's closer to 50-50 this year. And what I like about both guys is they're both used as running backs and they're both used in the receiving game. And that's big for me. And when you have the Cowboys who are a good offense that just like to move the backs in there, they're always going to be fresh when they're on the field. I don't think Pollard's going to overtake Zeke this year. I still think Zeke is going to have the higher end of the 50-50 split, but I think both are fine to start going forward.
Yeah, especially you got Dak Prescott, who's a quarterback who can air it out. I mean, even coming off of a shoulder injury, he threw 58 times in Week 1. Yeah. So there's plenty of targets to go around, and I think there's enough here where everybody eats. You don't have a star tight end in the mix there, so you're really talking about a couple of receivers and 2 running backs, and I think that's very doable.
Then, the receiving game is a little bit more hazy now with obviously Michael Gallup is out for 8 weeks or so, I believe. CeeDee Lamb, the only fully healthy wide receiver that you really want to start. If Amari Cooper isn't a go, it looks like he's going to play. He's been upgraded from out to limited for his practices. But rib injuries are tough to play through. Any hit you take, you're going to feel that. When you're running, you're going to feel that. So the question is how effective can Amari Cooper be against an Eagles defense that's been shockingly good against the pass for the first 2 weeks? I mean, it's not like they had they played Matt Ryan and they played Jimmy Garoppolo, so it's not like there was a lot of competition there. But still, do either of you, if you have Amari Cooper and he's cleared for the game, especially because it's Monday night, you kind of have to make this decision before Sunday. Do you want to start him?
So, yeah, I would start him in a receiver spot, and if it comes down to it and he's ruled out late, then I would just pick up Cedric Wilson, who's free.
Start him in a flex spot.
But, yeah, you could do that too, but I'm thinking of, Eagles, Cowboys. I don't think there's any running backs I would pick up. It would be more so.
Well, I'm more saying if
a Cedric Wilson.
If something happens where his injury acts up and it's a late thing, you want to have as much flexibility as possible to.
That's fair. Yeah,
slide someone else in there.
I'm just saying if you're starting Amari in your flex, other than a running back who you would rather put in there, I wouldn't do that. I think Amari's going to play, so I'm confident just keeping him in a wide receiver spot.
Yeah, I don't mind benching him this week if you can afford to do it, just because being a later game and whatnot. But I don't think you need to be so afraid of playing him. Again, I think the Eagles have had one of the easier starts to the schedule. I think Dallas is easily the best offense they've played so far. So I think a lot of their stats are going to change a little bit after this week.
And then the tight ends on Dallas. I mean, no one extraordinarily inspiring. They're splitting targets pretty evenly. I think 8 targets to 7 targets between the two. So between Jarwin and Schultz, nothing really to marvel at there. But we'll move over to the Philadelphia side of the ball after we rate Streak's team here. 10-man, full-point PPR. He's got Kyler Murray, Derrick Henry, Chris Carson. Not the best running backs for full-point PPR, but his wide receivers are pretty good with D-Hop, Robert Woods, Cortland Sutton in the flex is a fantastic value there. Logan Thomas at tight end. Woods has been largely disappointing. If I were to rate this team on a scale like 1 to 10, I would say I would give it like a 6.5 to a 7. I think the running backs could be a little better for PPR. And maybe no. I think I like Sutton more than Woods for the wide receiver too right now. It'd be interesting to see who you have that could go in at flex. How do you guys like Streak's team?
I would say it's like a 7.5 to me. I actually like this team a lot. You have a Kyler D-Hop stack that's probably the best stack in fantasy football. And Derrick Henry is matchup-proof Derrick Henry. It doesn't matter if it's 2-point PPR Derrick Henry, still will find ways to be a top running back. Chris Carson's the only big question mark here. I'm not too worried about Robert Woods. Matt Stafford looked good. It's not going to be Cooper Kupp 35 points every week, so I'm fine with Robert Woods as your 2 or 3 receiver. And Cortland Sutton last week, without Jerry Jeudy, stepped up as a clear number 1 option in that offense, had over 150 yards. I like this team a lot. It's Chris Carson's the only kind of question mark for me, but other than that, very solid team.
Yeah, it's a good team. Like Wake was kind of hinting at, I definitely like it better in standard versus PPR. Right. But again, like Steve was saying with Derrick Henry, I mean, even if you took week 1 away, if you said he through 2 weeks of the season, he's got 185 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. If that's
even if
1
you take
week
week
production,
1 and the first half of week 2 away,
if you just took week 2 and said that was his output for the first 2 weeks of the season, he would still be one of the top backs in the league. So I think your running backs are solid. Could they be better? Sure, but I don't think you have any glaring problems there. Hopkins is huge. I think that saves your receivers. But again, with Woods, I think his time's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And OBJ on the bench is huge.
Davis, Trey Sermon too. Yeah, I'm guessing that's Cordarrelle Patterson. That's a solid bench. It's a solid bench.
Solid.
You got options for your flex.
It's a solid bench. Yeah,
like it a lot.
I actually don't hate Trey Sermon over Carson this week if there's no other really healthy 49ers running back. I really like Trey Sermon.
I'm doubting Trey Sermon for the same reason that I was doubting James Robinson early in the season. For whatever reason, the coaching staff doesn't seem to have all that much confidence in him. And you can throw all the analytics out that you want, but if the coaching staff doesn't trust him enough to give him carries, doesn't matter.
The coaching staff may not have any other options. That's the big thing.
They got a couple guys that they're probably going to bring up off the practice squad. They brought in some guys to work out. They've got Trenton Cannon there, who's, he's a special teamer, but he still at least probably knows the playbook. So, and it sucks that this guy's a rookie and got concussion on his first NFL carry.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, poor dude. Yeah. Poor dude.
But
also, poor Eagles fans, because I think they're going to lose on Monday night. But you know what? We'll see. Let's talk about the Eagles side of the football. And then we actually skipped the game that we have to go back to because I forgot to make a banner for it. So just call me the idiot. We got to talk Bucks Rams as well.
I wonder what game that is. I wonder what game you skipped over.
Yeah, I know. I'm an idiot. Lay it on me. It's fine. But for the Eagles, Sanders, fine. Play him. Jalen Hurts, obviously, he's going to put up numbers against this Cowboys defense. Devonta Smith, yeah, absolutely. Dallas Goedert, yeah, play him. I think the only question mark we really have for the Eagles is how do we feel about Jalen Reagor? I don't know how I feel about Jalen Reagor.
I think it's closer between Smith and Reagor. If you were going to play Smith, you can play Reagor. I think they're very close this week, and the Cowboys should score a lot on the Eagles, a lot more than the Eagles have given up so far this year, and the Eagles are going to answer. Reagor is the clear number 2 receiver in that offense. So, yeah, I'm fine with playing Reagor.
Jordan?
And I agree, Streak. I love the matchup for Sermon. That's why. If there's no other backs, I like him against Green Bay.
Yeah, my only thing is, the Eagles didn't put up a ton of points last week. They won, but it was really more defensive than offensive. What am I thinking of? I'm getting all mixed up. They lost. I don't know what I'm saying. But their offense hasn't been consistently lightning. It's only 2 weeks in, but Dallas their defense hasn't been as bad as I would expect it to be in terms of the overall numbers. Usually they're worse. I'm not going to say they're great, But, the Chargers are a pretty solid offense.
Yeah.
They held them in check for the most part. We saw what the Bucs are capable of this past week. Dallas was better than that. I mean, sure, better than the Falcons isn't saying much, but,
Yeah.
if we're still kind of, what do we think about Jalen Reagor? I'm not as confident that Dallas is the inviting matchup that I used to think it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So.
Streak is saying that Bucks Rams is the best matchup of best game of the week, and I can't believe I forgot to make a fucking title for it. So we're gonna get into it now because now I remember to make a title for it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Los Angeles Rams. We'll get through this one, and then we have one more question from Josh that we'll get to right after this. But actually, you know what, Josh, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. Daniel Jones, Matt Stafford, or Derek Carr this week. And this ties it into this game here. I almost want to say Daniel Jones.
I really want to too, and I'm wearing the Rams shirt right
Daniel
now.
Jones.
I want to say Jones.
He's hitting the buzzer, and Steve and I are saying, definitely not.
The only thing that scares me, not even close. Only thing that scares me is if the Bucs and Rams have that typical kind of shootout game, which they could, even though they both have good defenses, it could be, two offenses just going at each other. Then I'd lean Stafford, but I mean Daniel Jones versus the Falcons. I know I'm wearing the Rams shirt. I sound like I would take Daniel Jones over Stafford this week. I hate saying that, but I think I would.
Now this changes it. Okay,
I'm
Streak
playing Daniel
says he would
Jones.
go Carr. No. Jordan, keep going.
No.
I don't think Carr is going to be as bad as you're making it out to be. The only thing is, like I said, I don't bet on the Raiders because they are so inconsistent. Carr could put up 400 yards. He could also have 4 interceptions and like 150 yards. So yeah, he can be good, but he's similar to what Ryan Fitzpatrick used to be. There's a bad game coming. Trust me on that. There's a storm coming. I don't know when it's going to hit, but Miami coming off a 35-0 loss. They're looking to get back into the win column. It could be this week. I'll tell you right now, in one of my leagues, I'm benching Dak Prescott to play Daniel Jones this week.
Wow. Okay. I mean,
bold.
I don't hate it because I think Daniel Jones is going to be top 5 this week. But
Josh
I
was
wouldn't
saying he would have to drop someone to get Daniel Jones. In that case, if you have to drop someone, it depends who's on your roster. But in that case, I'm leaning Stafford in this situation now. But it's tight. It's tight.
If you have someone you can just cut ties with and get Jones, that's fine. But don't drop someone that you're going to regret just to play Daniel Jones over Matt Stafford. Just start. His Stafford will be fine.
I would try to trade Carr if I were you.
Honestly, yeah. Or drop Jones.
Carr, I would try
drop Jones. Drop Carr for Jones.
Well, because I want Jones, but
you could get value for Carr.
You could probably get some value for Derek Carr right now. I think he's the highest he's going to be.
You could get a bench player for Carr at least, yeah.
Streak saying Danny Dimes the safest start. I swear, every time we try to get out of the show, people start coming with questions. And Danny has one too. Should he trade Kamara for Kelsey and James Robinson? 10-man, full point PPR. I'm
not doing it.
Hate it. I don't hate it. Really. Because
I know Kelsey is elite and he is the best tight end, and you basically win that position every week. But I just know at some point the Saints are going to say, hey, we have no more weapons. Our receivers are not good. We are just going to funnel it to Kamara. And Kamara is the guy who can have like a 40-point week and the next week get 40 again. I don't trust the Jaguars' offense. I don't trust James Robinson. So this is exactly. So that's why I'd rather have Kamara.
Kenny, who else do you have a running back in tight end?
There he is. Yeah, Mixon, Najee,
and Gaskins. Ooh. So he can afford the loss then. I mean, it's going to be a weaker running back stable.
I would try to see if he would. That wouldn't make sense. Yeah,
I'd rather keep Kamara still. I really would.
I would try and see maybe you can work out Mixon for Kelsey, drop Robinson from the trade, and maybe you add in another piece.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not a bad trade. I definitely think that he's got the team that he can absorb the loss of Kamara, but it is going to be a weak running back room at that point.
He commented said his tight end is Logan Thomas. I don't think that's someone you have to go out of your way to upgrade.
Don't make the deal then. Yeah,
so don't make the deal.
I would say this. try and keep Kamara, but maybe trade Mixon and Thomas for Kelsey and Robinson.
Kelsey.
I would do Mixon and Thomas for Kelsey, yeah.
Yeah, maybe try that. Maybe rework it a little, Kenny. I think you got something good working there. But Streak is wondering how we feel about the Rams-Bucks game, so let's definitely talk about that one.
Yeah.
So, Steve, you're the hometown guy. You got the Rams shirt on. How are you feeling about this matchup for the Los Angeles Rams on offense?
I know it's two really good defenses, but I just think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I won't touch Darrell Henderson. I don't want to touch any running back against Tampa. But Stafford, Cooper Kupp, I'm fine with Robert Woods too. I'm not scared off Robert Woods. I know tight end's so bad and Higbee was awful last week, but I'm okay if Higbee's on your team playing him. I think the Rams are going to put up points on the Bucks, and I think as good as the Rams defense is and as good as the Bucks defense is, the Bucks are going to put up points on the Rams. So I'm fine starting the guys you normally would, and that goes the same for the Buccaneers side of the ball too. You could be a little afraid of Mike Evans because maybe Jalen Ramsey follows him. But the Bucks also, they work in their receivers all over the field. I don't know if Ramsey's just going to pick one and say that's who I'm taking out for the game. And we even saw
they can afford to do that.
Right, and we saw in the Rams game with the Colts last week, the Colts just lined up Pittman in different areas to get him the ball. So I don't think you have to fade any of the Buccaneers wide receivers. I think you're safe starting the normal guys you normally would. I like Kupp more than Woods this week, Streak, but I'm fine with starting either of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you have either, you're going to start. Go ahead,
Is Cooper Kupp a bona fide wide receiver one from here on out? Or do we think he's just got a hot start to the season?
We've seen this before from Kupp, where he has a 2-3 game stretch where he's great, but I really think Kupp can be a wide receiver one. He's going to come back down to earth a little bit. He's not going to average 30 points a week, but he's someone that I think he will finish.
I'm playing him in fantasy.
What?
Just the weeks when I have to play against him.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would say that. I'm fine with Woods and Kupp. I think they're even for me this week. I think Kupp comes down a little bit and Woods goes up. But
the Bucs defense is not as daunting as everyone thought it would be.
Well, their secondary.
Their secondary.
The run defense is great.
Even if Darrell Henderson's not playing, like Sony Michel is nothing more than a flex option just based on usage, not based on talent, and not based on matchup.
So who wins this one?
Because in tournaments, you gotta.
And he said Antonio Brown is out. Yeah, he is confirmed out. But I'm okay playing Evans or Godwin. I just don't think Ramsey just decides to take one out of the game.
Yeah, I think I think AB being out actually from a fantasy standpoint bodes well for both of those two guys, because I kind of said from the beginning of the season, you're probably going to see two guys be successful and one guy kind of have an off week. It was Mike Evans in week 1, AB in week 2. Now you take that out. You still have Gronk at tight end, but I think this offense can sustain 3 targets like that. So I think that Godwin and Evans can both go off. I think Jalen Ramsey, I don't even know that Jalen's really going to shadow one of them. I think they might have to move him around a little bit, because I don't think they can afford to just play an island, because both those guys are capable of tearing him up.
What would make sense to me is if they had him on Godwin for like most of the field, and then as soon as it gets to the red zone, have him go on Mike Evans. I feel like that's what honestly makes the most sense. But Steve, you mentioned Tyler Higbee. I think he's a must start this week. I mean, the Bucs have been awful against tight ends. They've given up in 2 weeks 15 passes for 153 yards, and Higbee is not fighting for targets with another tight end right now. So if Gerald Everett was still there, I would be a little concerned. But as far as I'm concerned, if you have Higbee in your lineup, unless he was a late round stash for you and you have a top tier tight end, he should be in your starting lineup. And maybe I feel like both quarterbacks are absolutely startable. Defenses aren't great matchups, but these are two good teams that are going to score points. I'm playing Tom Brady in my guillotine. I feel comfortable doing that, to be completely honest. But the last thing to really touch on, Fournette and Ronald Jones.
I don't hate Fournette. I don't hate Fournette. I mean,
yeah,
Montgomery was decent week 1 against the Rams. I think Taylor was okay.
That's true.
I think Fournette, he gets work in the receiving game too. And the Rams' run defense is definitely the weakest point of their defense. So I would say, they got a great pass rush, a great secondary. If the Bucs want to move the ball, I think they're going to have to establish the run a little bit. And it's going to be through Fournette. The coaching staff just trusts him more. He's used in the receiving game. I'm comfortable starting him as a flex option.
Jordan, how do you feel about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards Fournette. Again, you guys have been kind of lightly pounding the table for Ronald Jones a bit, saying.
Oh, I haven't been lightly. I think he's way better, but. Yeah.
But again, this is a case that we've brought up a couple times now, where you can bring up the analytics, yards per carry, and whatnot, but if the coach doesn't trust them in game time situations. It doesn't matter. For whatever reasons, Ronald Jones is not their go-to guy. Right. I think that it's the chances that Fournette, even if he's not getting a ton of carries, the chance that he sees a 1-2 yard rush at the goal line for a touchdown, I think is reasonably high in this game. Yep. And even then, that'll at least salvage something for you. I think there are better options, just not many better options, especially with San Francisco losing pretty much everybody. And there's no clear cut. All right, this is the guy now. It's a Trenton Cannon, who's really a special teamer, or Trey Sermon, who's been ignored by the coaching staff and coming off a concussion. So there's a lot of stuff like that. James Robinson should be a startable guy, but he's not. So Leonard Fournette, I could see him coming into lineups. I wouldn't trust him as anything more than the flex, but reasonable there.
All right. So last question we're going to have before we get out of here. Josh did ask, he lost to Higgins, might lose Hopkins, but Hopkins is going to play. It seems like he will. So, just trust that Hopkins is going to play. And, if you have to go between Sony Michel, Corey Davis, and Hunter Renfrow, though, who would you guys say that he should start between those three? I'm inclined to say Renfrow, but I'm not excited about any of them.
I'm going to say Corey Davis just because I think he's going to get volume regardless of how that game script goes. Hunter Renfrow, it's just the Raiders have a lot. You don't know if he's going to continue to get the targets he's been getting. It could be Edwards. It could be Ruggs. And I'm not starting any running back versus Tampa, especially Sony Michel, who's just a straight downhill runner. And you're just running into Vita Vea and the rest of the Tampa front seven. No, thank you. Doesn't get used much in the receiving game. I think Corey Davis, he could bust, but if the Jets have to move the ball at all against Denver, it's going to be through Corey Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I only trust Sony Michel if Henderson is out, and that's just because it's hard for me to see the Rams shifting totally away from the run game. Even Darrell Henderson's not that great of a back, but he's getting work, especially at the goal line. They like to run the ball inside the 10-yard line.
That's fair.
And for a downhill runner, that's where you want to be. I would lean next towards Hunter Renfrow. I think that game's unpredictable, so Hunter Renfrow could get shut down. He could also go off. Like I said, I don't like betting on the Raiders just because they're so unpredictable. Corey Davis, I would try to stay away from if you can. He's at that point where I need to prove a game from him to show that he can really produce before I'm trusting him. But that's a tough situation. Heading into the beginning of the season, all three of those guys were guys that we looked at with potential upside, and it just hasn't really happened for any of them.
Corey Davis had a good week one. It was garbage time, but he had a very good week one. He just didn't do anything against the Patriots because Zach Wilson couldn't do anything.
Right. And last question here. I'm going to say, if you're going to trade Antonio Brown, wait until after he is off the COVID list. I'm going to ask you, Jace, to come back with this question next week. Just because, if you're going to trade him this weekend, you're kind of selling low on him. And they're, especially after a bad week, I would wait on this, wait for Antonio Brown's value to go back up a little bit. Then I think I feel more comfortable answering this question, I think. Does that make sense, guys?
No, that's fine. I don't sell high, don't sell low.
Antonio Brown is somebody that, he's missed a lot of time, but it's not because of his decline on the field. Now it's COVID, it's various legal issues off the field, but his value will bounce back. Like I said, there'll be a week where Chris Godwin doesn't do much, and it's Antonio Brown and Mike Evans, and that's the time to pull the trigger on that trade.
Yep, 100%. Well, guys, it's been a fun one. Another almost over hour and a half in this show. But
Yeah, this was a long one.
These week three game by game shows are going to be like that, I guess. But it's been fun. Thanks everyone on YouTube for tuning in and commenting. It makes the shows way more fun to do. So thanks to everybody for your questions. Make sure you come back next week. Make sure you come back. Are we doing anything this weekend? Maybe. We might do some DFS stuff this weekend. Stay tuned for an announcement on that. The Fantasy Fallout is every Monday with Joe DiBiase from WGR 550 Sports Radio here in Buffalo. But if you are Bills fans tuning in, make sure you tune in to our pregame shows, halftime shows, and postgame shows this Sunday for when the Bills take on the Washington football team. But that's all I got for you. It's all Steve Scott. It's all Jordan Naz. Jordan, did you have something else? You opened your mouth a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, if you commented and we gave you some advice on your team, tweet at us and let us know how it worked out for you. We're curious.
Oh, yeah. Okay. If what was his name? Who was the dude?
Noah Fant dude.
Two tight end guy.
Noah
Two
Fant.
tight ends.
Okay, yeah. Gronk and Noah Fant guy. If you tune in and you rewatch this, let us know if you won your matchup because you haven't tweeted at us yet, so I imagine you lost. But it was right in the process, I swear. For myself, all of Trainwreck Fantasy Sports, thank you everybody for tuning in. Good night now.